What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Apogee Fitness Podcast, coming to you from the Apogee Therapy Center recording studio. My name is David Carter.
And I'm Kevin Harrington.
It's hot out there.
Yeah.
It's extremely hot. I didn't even realize how hot it was until I got into my truck after we got done working out.
It's hot. And I told Dave when we were working out, because we didn't work out together, but we worked out in proximity, that I just don't like working out in the summer. It's too humid.
So I'm the opposite. I would rather sweat than freeze, but I do think today was excessive.
Like, I don't mind heat, okay?
Yeah.
Give me an exhaust fan in the gym to get the humidity out. I love to sweat. I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
But I don't want to have to feel like I'm wearing a coat. I'm wearing a personal cloud that's hugging me. I'm not into that.
Well, whatever. It was fun, man. This is the second time I think we've actually gotten to work out together in the same gym, and
I did the same thing I did last time. I just lifted.
Yeah, you just lifted,
Yeah.
and I sweated my butt off, but it was good. We were
good.
over at Crash.
Big things.
Big things over at Crash. But yeah, want to introduce our podcast guest for today?
Yeah, today we actually have somewhat of a outside of the CrossFit world fitness superstar, as we like to say. She is a former LPGA Tour player, a 2002 runner-up at the Women's Amateur Golf Tournament, and a NCAA 2003 All-American.
She's very accomplished.
Welcome, Miss Brandi Jackson.
Yes, thanks for having me, even though I'm sitting here in my car doing this because of sort of not last minute but unexpected travel, which this sums up my life for most of my golf career and now my business. So you caught me just in my element, really.
I'll be honest with you, as long as I have done podcasts, you're the second person that I have ever been in a podcast with where we actually interviewed him in a car. And for some reason, it always sounds great in a car.
Well, that's good. I mean, maybe it's just the sound.
I think it is. It's the compression inside. Yeah.
Yeah, and everybody feels most relaxed in their car.
Well, they're in their car.
They're in is there anywhere more self-fulfilling than by yourself in your car?
Somebody drives up beside you and parks beside you and sees you just randomly talking at your phone and nodding.
Sitting right here beside me since I pulled in, that I'm sure is probably wondering what I'm doing over there. However, I think she might be living out of her car because she's got a lot of stuff in her car. And again, so do I. So
I was about to say, be careful she doesn't come knocking on your window asking you if you want to go out to dinner.
Yeah, it takes all shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
Man, exactly. I tell you what, that introduction was a little intimidating. That's pretty awesome accolades. So, Brandi, I first met you not too long ago over at Fittest, where you competed, and we'll get into that, the CrossFit side, but a little bit. First, when we were there, you told me that you have your own podcast. Is that still true?
It is, yes. I have not. It's been about a year kind of hiatus, I like to say, just because the recruiting world has been so busy with just clients over the past year, and everything became so virtual with what we were doing that I hated to ask the coaches to do more virtual calls and virtual video chat. So I haven't done as much since last spring, but I did a solid year and a half of doing college coach interviews, and it did really well. Got a lot of viewership and just some great insight from the coaches, and it was great for business, just great for just the girls and their parents across the country to hear from the college coaches. So it was an awesome learning experience. I mean, I just kind of decided I would do it and just started researching how to do it and what equipment I needed and how to do it. I use Anchor as well. I've heard the on y'all's podcast, that's what y'all use. So dove into Anchor and GarageBand and just did it, and it just went really well. The first guest I had was a good one.
Did you do video or did you just do audio?
Most of mine were all audio. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, most of it was all audio. I had a couple that we did as video chats, but I just recorded mostly through Zoom audio, and then just uploaded it and did some editing and put it out there. And luckily I got some really good coaches. The Wake Forest coach was my very first guest, and they actually had one of their finished ranked number 1 in the country that year. That was when COVID and everything, I think, shut down. Might have been 2 years ago. Either way. So it was one of my first episodes, and it was a great one. And then from there, it just kind of took off.
That's awesome. All right, so
I need to get back on it, though.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd like to listen to a couple of your episodes. So you've had your own podcast. How many podcasts have you been a guest of?
I've been on maybe 5 or 6, maybe a few more than that over the years of having my business and just jumping on some different podcasts from some different swing coaches and a lot of people in the golf industry. So I've been on a handful of other ones.
All right,
Not
so
too many,
she's
but
well
a few.
seasoned, and
She's
you
well
don't.
seasoned. All right, well,
get to
thank you
do-
very much
you
for
don't get to do
listening
your
in
pot,
today.
bro.
Do you want any of the podcasts that you've been on? They can just go listen to those.
That's right. All right, so Brandi, tell us a little bit about like who you are, like your background, your life growing up, where you're from. Obviously, you played golf. Were there any other sports you played prior to that, and all of the above?
Yeah, so I grew up in small town Williamston, South Carolina, so not too far from Anderson, where Kevin's from as well.
Nope.
Very small town, and I played a lot of sports. I actually played volleyball all through high school. Absolutely loved it. And then I played basketball up until my sophomore year of high school. So it was just that kind of always had a ball or playing something, doing something. Did that. And I gave up basketball my sophomore year because from the very beginning, golf really was what I wanted to do. I just kind of had a knack for it when I was 7, 8 years old and I first started playing. We had the Saluda Valley Country Club that's there in Williamston.
Yep.
My dad and his brother played, and I just picked it up and loved it from the start. And literally from that point, I said, and I actually had gone up to a clinic at Furman where a lot of they produced more LPGA players at that time, especially had produced more LPGA players than any other school in the country. Came home and said, I'm going to Furman. I'm going to be a professional golfer. And this was when I was like maybe 9 or 10 at that point. And in a way, the rest is kind of history because it did kind of work out that way. So I did play collegiately at Furman. And
Where'd you play high school? Easley Green Waves?
No, I was at Palmetto.
Oh, okay, yeah, Palmetto Mustangs.
Yeah.
Shout out
I
to
played on the
Palmetto.
boys team, so I grew up playing with all the boys. Was one of the only girls that's ever played there. So I kind of just learned how to get in there with the boys and always compete with them and played at Furman, graduated and had a pretty good senior year going in and got LPGA status coming out and played professionally for 8 years. Some LPGA years, some years were on the developmental tour, the semester tour, and just couldn't hang out there. That'd be a whole episode all in itself for all the
So were you on like?
and some of it will come up. But
Were you like on the buy.com tour basically? What you're saying?
The other years, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
all
so
right.
I came out fresh, got full LPGA status, my very first time at Q school, and maturity mentally wise was just not ready for it. Physically, I had the game. The maturity and all that was not there,
Right.
and you kind of get thrown out there. I'm fresh out of college, one of only 2 people coming out of college who had status, and definitely wasn't ready for it.
Who was on your bag? Was your dad on your bag to begin
My
with?
dad was, to begin with. Yeah, he came out my first year. He was on the bag when finished runner up at the AM when I got my status. So he quit his job at the time and went and caddied for me, and we went out on the road together that year. So
That's
it was
awesome.
a lot of fun, but definitely a learning experience to say the least.
So it sounds like you have obviously a very tight relationship with your dad. I think a lot of people, when they first start playing golf, it's because of their dad. Like, if their dad played golf, you're more likely to play golf. Like, most of my friends who play golf started playing golf with their dads when they were younger. When you first started out, and was it something that he kind of drug you out there and was like, here's some little golf, or did you get a little golf club set when you were a little kid? And was it something that you really obviously you said you wanted to play professionally right away, but I'm sure there were times from the age of 10 to 18 where you were like, I'm so done with this, Dad. I'm not doing this with you. This sucks. Did any of that ever happen?
There was. I do remember as a teenager, there was one time where my desire to do things non-golf related kind of took over a little bit. And I remember my dad very clearly said, hey, I'm not going to force you to play and practice, but you're going to get a job and you're going to start paying for your own stuff. And because it kind of was that trade-off, as long as I was practicing and working, he felt like that took over, or that took my time, that I would have to actually have a job and pay for that kind of stuff. So when he told me that quickly kind of got me back to the golf course. But when I was little, originally, so I have an older sister. She played all sports as well, but the clubs were originally made for her. My dad just cut down a set. We still have them, this little red carry bag.
Nice.
Originally, I cut them down for her, and she actually didn't like it. And I used to just go ride in the golf cart. I'd somehow wedge my way in between my dad and my uncle and take a nap, basically. And I would get my feet in between the cart and just ride with them. And then when I started, though, it definitely was, for me, was a love that from the very beginning. But yeah, there's been some points where it's been frustrating. And like I said, when I got into my teenage years, I had a little bit of that kind of rebellion of trying to balance, social life with golf, with, grades and all that, and got a little bit of a reality check for that one. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know what I'm asking for quick fire questions.
Oh, yeah, you already got that.
Yep, I already got them.
No. Did I set myself up for that one?
You did.
Uh-oh. I'm scared now.
Nah, don't be. So you were at high school. Obviously, you played with the boys and stuff. What is your opinion of how did obviously you said you kind of muscled your way in. It changed your way of maybe playing. How do you feel that molded you as a player today? And how do you approach that with high school coaches and some schools that don't obviously may or may not have a females team?
So I love that there is girls golf in high school now. So it was just starting out when I was coming through and going to a smaller high school. We didn't have I said I was the only girl who played.
Right.
Over at Hannah, they had a girls team. It was like I said, I think my 8th or 9th grade year was when they first started a girls team at Hannah. So It was brand new, fresh. All your bigger schools were starting to have it. And it was great. And I'm glad that it's still there. You just still only have a handful of really competitive girls that kind of get spread out among the high schools. And so sometimes when you do really want to play competitively and you want to get better, playing with the guys a lot of times is a great way to, to be able to do that. Because again, it's not that, there's not that there's not plenty of girls out there playing golf,
right?
But it's just still so kind of spread out. So sometimes it may only be one girl on the high school team that's really competitive. But yet with the boys, you're going to have a lot more. So it just helps kind of step that competition level up. They're always competing, that's really kind of what they're out there for. And so sometimes it just puts you in that element a little bit more. So if the girls have a chance to do it, I think it's great, but I don't ever want to take away from what's being built from a girls golf perspective. And the fact that high school golf has it, it's just still a little bit limiting sometimes from the girls who are really competitive. They play such short distances.
I was about to ask you that. In high school, obviously they play off different pins, but in high school, how further up did the boys shoot versus how further up did the ladies shoot?
So when I played, I had to play from the same tees. So it was the exact same. I was treated and in some ways treated just like one of the boys. But when I did, it was when you play on the boys team, you played from the boys tee. So
wow, that's nice. I
was having to play farther back. Anybody else who played. Now it's changed a little. Like Virginia has boys and girls, but the girls play at a shorter distance. So you can play on the boys team because they don't have girls golf. But you are going to play a little bit shorter distance. But for us, you played from the same tees as the boys. So if you were going to play, there was no, nothing special for the girls when you played on the boys team then.
Do you think that helped your game?
I think it did, yeah. Sometimes it can hurt a little bit because you're trying to hit it far and you're trying to get it out there and you're trying to compete against, guys who are going to be physically stronger than you. And then back then, strength and speed definitely wasn't a big thing in golf, period, but especially for girls. But it did. I mean, it made me tougher at, some of the things that were said and comments that were made. It definitely made me tougher. But for me at that point, I was such a tomboy. I mean, some people, if you see some of my social media where I've shared it before, I mean, people don't believe me until they see some of the pictures. I was the biggest tomboy. So, I mean, for the first 3 or 4 years, I fit right in with them.
Jacket shorts and polo shirts.
One of the boys. So it didn't take much to kind of phase me just because I just really just kind of joined right in for the most part.
That's awesome.
I've got one more question about kind of your childhood and starting to play golf. I'm sure you've probably had this conversation with your dad. Was there a certain time that you guys went out or like a certain point in time where he was like, wow, she's got kind of a gift and I'm going to kind of hone in on this?
Yeah, I mean, my dad he's played golf his whole life, but he plays very unorthodox way of playing, the way he lines up. I mean, he's completely self-taught. And so he really didn't know what to do with me in a way. I mean, I kind of had this kind of natural swing and he took me to go get lessons and everybody was just kind of like, she's got this great swing. And, so he just kind of, again, just didn't really know what to do. He didn't know how to, he tried and did a lot, but then he just kind of knew that it was kind of out of his hands. But I think it was just kind of unexpected in a way. Again, especially because how he had played and being so self-taught, it was just, I definitely didn't grow up in a typical kind of golf course country club with an instructor and going to lessons. I did not grow up in that environment. I mean, my dad and I just spent all the time out on the golf course, just learning how to hit shots and just trying to figure it out on our own, really. And about as not totally self-taught. I had a couple great golf coaches as junior player, especially out in college, who no means self-taught, but me and him just kind of figured it out a lot ourselves, and definitely owe a lot to him for doing that, because we had really no resources, no idea what we were doing, nothing to follow, none of that. So
right, there's no YouTube.
Kind of unique, I guess.
That's awesome.
You got to watch Sunday golf and like, okay, Dad, write all the notes and we'll try it when I get out there on Monday.
Well, it's definitely a little different than my business, and a big part of my business is about planning it and using all your resources. And there's so much knowledge and everything out there that now, if you're not doing that, you're really behind. Back then, you could get away with a little bit more and not be so far behind everybody else.
So you mentioned that you played at Furman, so we've established that. How did Furman find you? Obviously, they found you through high school, but I mean, how did the recruiting process for that go?
So definitely a much different process. I will age myself in the fact that we did not have emails. You didn't do videos. You didn't text. You didn't do any of that through my recruiting process. You literally wrote letters in the mail and you sent it to the schools you wanted to look at. And then when they were allowed to call you, they could call you and then, come out and watch you play. There was none of this sending video and this online resume and emails and social media. Absolutely none of that. So it was, growing up in the area, like I said, from early point, I had always wanted to go to Furman, was recruited by some other places. For me, again, growing up kind of where I didn't get to play at the national level. I just didn't have the means to travel to do it. So I didn't quite, and Furman was one of the top, at that point they were, and they still are most years, top 20, top 30 programs in the country. So he could recruit the best players in the country, not just one of the top ones in the state. And so he liked me, he liked a lot about it, but just and knew I needed the money, the scholarship. So I just kind of clawed my way into it, came up with enough academic money. He had another player that decided to go to South Carolina, left him a little bit of money, and kind of the very end of the process just kind of came together that way. And so I kind of had to, in that case, I kind of had to claw my way into that opportunity. Whereas I had some other places, College of Charleston, Wofford, UNC Wilmington, a couple of places that really wanted me to come play. I was going to be one of their better recruits, but I had my mindset that it was going to be Furman, and thankfully it worked out that way.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. If Furman didn't fall through or didn't work, was that going to be it? But apparently you had some places, like you said, lined up.
Yeah, I did, and it was pretty much going to be down to there. Wofford would have been. They were just starting their golf program. I knew some of the girls going, and that's kind of what I had settled on at that point until the last couple weeks. Mick, my coach at Furman, actually saw me have a hole-in-one that summer. So we saw a couple of good things, and then adjusted some things, just kind of fell in place just just the right place, the right time.
So how long had Furman had a female women's golf team when you got there? How long had that program been there?
It's been since, I should know this, because actually I think it was when Beth Daniel was coming through, she actually played with the boys. So I don't want to age or date anything to say, but I got there in 99, so it had probably been 30-ish years or so, maybe.
Oh, wow.
Maybe.
That's
I hate
cool.
to say that and be totally wrong. But you had Betsy King, Beth Daniel, Dottie Pepper, Sherry Turner were kind of the four main ladies who had come through and had done so well on tour, and a couple Hall of Famers and everything. And that was kind of this just legends of the ones from Furman who had come through during that time.
Was it everything you thought it would be and more? At Furman?
Yeah, especially at that time. I guess in a way, I grew up a Clemson fan. I am still, I get in trouble for this all the time. I'm a diehard Clemson fan. Tiger, grew up in a Tiger family. My uncle went, and he was good friends with the quarterback back then. And so my family just kind of became Clemson fans from an early point. So I grew up in that, but they didn't have women's golf. They didn't start a women's golf program until 7-8 years ago, I guess it's been. So all along I knew I didn't have a chance to go there. So I didn't know what the big athletics was like, but at the time it was just still so much more about that golf environment that I was looking for, and I didn't think about it. So a little part of me misses the big environment, the big athletic department, what that had. But I got such a good education and, all that Furman had and the resources and so much of what it was and just the history behind the program that I couldn't have asked for a better opportunity there.
So what did you major in over at Furman?
So I majored in health and exercise science.
Okay, cool.
So,
which is a little ironic when you hear what my exercise and nutrition story really is, but that was my degree.
So, okay, everybody has an idea of what college football looks like and the whole idea of practicing and, they practice so much during the season and then their school is kind of sort of takes a back seat in a roundabout way. How does that kind of sort of the same with college golf when you played, or is it kind of sort of what you would see at home? Like, oh, I'm going to go play golf on Saturday, or I'm going to go play golf on Sunday.
That, no. It's kind of the same thing as everybody thinks is like life out on a tour of a professional golfer, is so glamorous. You get to travel and play all these great golf courses and do all this. It is. While it is great, it's a lot of exactly what I'm doing right here. Being in your car, long days on the road, staying in hotels, all that. But in the same thing in college golf. College golf is actually one of the most strenuous sports in college because it's a spring sport, but you actually play fall and spring competitively. So as soon as you get on campus, you're usually going to play one of your first tournaments within I missed my first 3 days of classes my freshman year. We had regionals out in Oregon, so I actually missed the first 2 or 3 days of classes. Okay. So you play 3, 4, occasionally you'll play 5 tournaments in the fall, and then you start your spring season, early, usually about mid-February, you'll start spring season, and you'll play another 3 or 4. Then you'll have conference regionals and nationals that go up until the end of the semester. So it's one of the only sports that does that. So you really don't have much of an off season, and golf's always had that. Golf in general, when you're a professional or whatever, I mean, it's definitely a year round. You don't really kind of have this season of training and this season of competition. It's always been a year round sport for most everybody who plays competitively. And so it actually limits what you can major in a lot of times in college because you can't take some of these classes with labs because like with football, you've got the spring season where, you still got to be at practice and you're training, but you're not actually competing. Whereas with golf, if you've got a class that's every Thursday, you're going to miss it, 4 or 5 times out of the semester because you're traveling. So it makes it tough. It's extremely time consuming because it's just spread out throughout the entire year, really.
Now, when you play golf in conference play, is that like a weekend, like 3-day tournament like that, or like you get like just Clemson goes and plays South Carolina? Is that just a one-on-one weekend tournament?
So it's usually 12 to 15 or 20 teams all together. So you've got a tournament of that many teams, and you've got 5 players from each team, and so you'll have 3. All of your number ones from Clemson, Furman, and South Carolina might all play together. Then all your 2s would play together, all your 3s, all your 4s, all your 5s, and you kind of go in that order. And so you'll play. Typically, it's 3-day events. So you'll play Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Practice round Thursday is typical. Obviously, some different things with that. But yeah, you play more tournaments than you do like in high school. You typically play like one-on-one matches, or occasionally there'll be like a tri-match. That's more high school. College, it's tournaments where you've got, let's say 10, 12, 15, 20 teams all play in the same event.
Wow.
All right. So you say there's usually 5, or is there always 5 spots or 5 people that are playing at a time?
Typically, yeah. The team is 5, and then the 4 low scores are going to count out of those 5.
Okay. So how many people are actually on a typical girls golf team then?
Anywhere from about 8 to 10. Occasionally you'll get teams that are, 11 or 12, and there's a few that are only 6 or 7. Just it's all kind of based on Title IX, coach preference, and all that. So somewhere in that 8 to 10 is about average. Boys teams tend to be a little bit bigger, but the girls, it's usually, I said 8 or 9. 10's usually about the biggest team for most of them.
So if you only place top 5 people in a tournament, the people that are 6, 7, and 8, do they just? I mean, I don't want to say for better luck. Yeah, okay, I was about to. But during the week, do they play? Like, do you guys do like a round robin to see who may play that tournament or the following week's tournament?
Yeah, so you're typically going to do qualifying, and so all coaches handle it different, but you kind of have your own tournament. So that's one of the very unique thing about golf versus which is kind of what it correlates a little bit with the CrossFit competitions and stuff and competing against each other. So when you're in college, you're competing against the other girls on your team. I mean, that you're competing to go travel and play. And I mean, you have that within positions in other sports, the backup quarterback, it's all, those kinds of things, but you're literally all.
Yeah, but this is more of a day-to-day thing. This is more like a day-to-day thing.
Yeah, you're constantly just competing, to earn that spot to go. And then even when you get to the tournaments, I mean, yes, it's a team. There's a team winner and runner-up in third place, but there's also an individual that, your team could play terrible, but as long as you play good individually, you can earn just as many individual titles that mean just as much in a way, in the big picture of things. So it's a very awkward kind of type of sport when you throw it into a team environment, but yet it's still so individual. It's a very weird dynamic for sure.
So how does that work exactly as far as people floating up from position 5 to number 1? Or like, how often does that like transfer like every week? I mean, is it a new 1 through 5 every single week usually, or is it usually about the same?
So when you get to an actual tournament, it can easily change. So if the 5th player, who plays the 5th spot the first day plays well and shoots the lowest score, typically that next day they're kind of in the number 1 slot.
Okay.
And some of your really competitive teams, I mean, anybody could play that position, but you typically, a lot of times they're going to start to really get a pretty solid 1-2 person, sometimes that 3rd person, and then a lot of times that 4th, 5th spot can kind of rotate in and out. It definitely varies from team to team, but it tends to kind of trend to this 1 or 2, maybe 3 are going to always be in that spot. And then, the rest kind of can vary in those spots, stay a little bit more open.
So everybody knows that college football is on TV, but why I haven't seen, have you seen college golf on TV?
No.
I mean,
It's
Brandi, it's there, but why is it
Well,
not pushed as much? Because, I mean, golf is huge in the South and golf is huge around America.
Everywhere.
You would think that, hey, I want to watch the college version of Augusta National or, Pinehurst, wherever. Let's watch those. Yeah. Because, I mean, golf to me, female golf is one of the few, and I hate to say this, but to me it's one of the few sports that it actually has a popularity because people will watch it because it's golf. It's like she got a hole in one. It translates. Yeah. So, I mean, why is it not really gained kind of like a footing when it comes to national coverage?
So there is some. So you actually said the Augusta National. So they actually 3 years ago, including COVID, the Augusta National became or created the Augusta Women's AM. Or there's exact words for it. To where there's actually so they play another course the first 3 days, and then if you make the cut, you play Augusta National on the Saturday before the Masters, and that is actually televised. That's all televised, so that's all amateurs. So it's mostly all your top college players. So that's one that is, and then NCAAs are both televised, and it has gotten actually when they went to it being televised is when they switched to a match play format to try to make it a little bit more exciting, and it has led to some extremely exciting finishes. So both of those are, and there's a few that are. It's just most everything's on Golf Channel. So if you're not really a true golf fan, you're not necessarily going to know it on a big scale like ESPN or anything like that. They're going to always focus more on PGA, LPGA, the professional side of things. And again, because golf's so year round, they've got so much coverage of the PGA Tour and the LPGA Tour. It's hard to then fit college in there because it's just a continuous cycle, really.
I always forget golf TV.
So. Yes. Yep. So most people know, even if you haven't played golf, you've heard about golf and how mental of a game golf is. That's basically the game. It's mental toughness. A lot of people have talent, I guess physical talent, but it's what's between the ears, which really counts pretty much every weekend. If you're playing in the fall, maybe a short break in the winter, and then in the spring, what did that do to your mentality, and just how were you able to maintain that focus? Did they do mental health exercises for you guys? I know sports psychology has become a huge thing in the sports realm within the last 10 years.
Do you do a lot of visualization?
Was that around back when you were playing, or?
Be the
It
ball.
was just it's kind of the same thing with like the strength and conditioning side of golf. All of that was really becoming, more popular. And in golf, I think probably was one of the first sports that the psychology world infiltrated first, just because, like I said, it's such a mental sport. We did, I think it was my senior year, we had a golf psychologist come in and kind of work with all of us. Up to that point, I had never had any kind of sports psychology work done or anything. It wasn't as popular. I mean, now it definitely is. I mean, it's one of those. Back then, it was definitely that feeling of like, if you did, it meant something was wrong with you.
Sure.
Now
yeah.
it's just, it's just part of the game. I mean, you've got to have that mental toughness. Some people struggle with it more than others and may need a little more clinical versus just kind of the mental coaching and just the more baseline stuff. But it wasn't that much when it's actually what hurt my game. I didn't work on it. I didn't seek the help I probably needed with it. The anxiety, the structure, the discipline, that's what I had and then lacked. Had the anxiety, but I lacked the structure and the discipline and the organization of things and never really put the time and energy into it. So it's such a big part of it. We didn't do it really in college, but it is a big part of it now. I mean, for collegiate teams, they're going to do a lot more of that kind of stuff. But I mean, your off season of college, you're typically playing some amateur events down in Florida during the winter. So you're still just kind of constantly playing year round.
Wow.
So your brain definitely just continues to just be in that competition mode. But there's a lot of mental training, a lot of exercises, a lot of stuff, a lot of different. I mean, it is a huge business in itself for sure.
So when you say it played a little bit into your college career and your professional career, was it just more along, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I really have no clue. I suck at golf. I'm left-handed. I draw the ball way wide. If I want to address the ball, I almost turn almost 45 degrees. But was it more, and you can answer the question better than anyone here can, was it more like a lack of confidence in yourself that day? Like, I'm going up against number one from Duke or number one from, College of Charleston or wherever, and I don't know if I can do this. Was that kind of sort of the anxiety of it, or?
A little bit. I mean, it wasn't necessarily being, against that one person because, when you're playing in a tournament, I mean, everybody's so spread out. You don't really know until you get in a lot of times who's even playing. So it's rarely that like one-on-one feeling of it. Now, there's times, out on tour when if I played well, I would get paired with a really big name. And that kind of upped the anxiety a little bit. And for me personally, it was just, it was partly that confidence thing. I was very easily rattled. I had a lot of anxiety. I tried to play it off like, oh, I'm not nervous, but the reality was, I mean, I straight up was. And it was, I was very easily intimidated, just very easily. I just never got comfortable. I never just felt in my element, just never really believed, not that I didn't believe I belonged. I just mentally and maturity wise, just kind of just was so lackadaisical about stuff. So then all of a sudden, once I was put in that position, and went the way it affects your golf game, especially like around short game and stuff. I mean, the tension and all it takes. I mean, the golf club's moving so fast and it's just such a minute, movement that it doesn't take much, and you just flinch a little bit or you just get this little off. And I mean, shots start going crazy, you chunk it, you blade it, you slice it, you hook it, you get yourself in trouble, and then it just compounds from there. And again, mentally, it's just so hard to just get past it and reset and believe that next shot's going to be just fine when you're just standing over it. And the biggest thing too is it's just you have nobody to look to, nobody to blame it on, nobody to ask for help really. It's a tough grind when it comes to that. Just that feeling of the weight on your, the weight of the world on your shoulders. A lot of times is really what it feels like out there.
I think the only example I can really bring to my mind is when John Daly, the year in Vegas, he fluffed the whole hole. I don't remember the final, how many shots he took on that hole, or he may have won the tournament and then turned around and took all his winnings to Vegas and lost it all. I mean, and I'm not picking on John Daly. I just think that he's just to me, he just seems like a regular bro.
He sounds like your guy. You brought him up a couple times.
It's somebody you can sit down and be like, that sucked. He'd be like, yeah, it sucked, but it
Let's
just
go take shots.
you know, but then you turn around and you have people like Lefty who, you know, just what was the tournament down at Kiowa that he won?
The PGA.
Yeah, I mean, he won the PGA, and he didn't win it on the last shot, but he basically he won it. I mean, you know, you see, it was just confidence that he has, and I mean, but you know, I see it all the time. I do. Yeah, so I mean, you know, and I see it in the women's side too. I mean, it's come a long way. For me to know a lot about golf that I don't play is kind of really absurdly stupid on my part. But
so what is a solid female college score, like as far as you know, playing 18?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to win, I mean, at the Division I level, the top tier Division I, I mean, you've got to be under par very consistently. I mean, it's, you know, 67, 68, 69 pretty consistently to win most of those events. I mean, it's very strong. It's extremely competitive, especially at that level. Now, again, when you start looking across the board and how many teams have, you know, have women's golf, and, you know, it definitely thins out more than what the men's side does. But when you're at that top level of, I mean, across the board D1 and top D2, top D3, especially that top tier D1, I mean, it's competitive. Yeah, I mean, if you're not shooting under par and most of your finishing under par, you're probably not scratching the surface for winning many collegiate events.
Wow. So would you call Saluda your home course?
It is, yes.
Okay.
That would be now I was lucky enough, Thornblade, I was one of the all-stars is what they called us when I was playing on tour. So got to play out there when I was playing professionally, but Saluda Valley is definitely my home for sure.
So when
it comes to that.
Talk a little bit about transferring over from college to the LPGA. How did that come about? You said when you graduated, you had already gotten your card or your status. I'm assuming that's the same thing. And okay. And just talk about that. Just going from college to all of a sudden being paid to play, and then the travel and everything in between.
Yeah, it was a big, especially looking back at the time, you know, you just kind of did it and went with it. And so I graduated in the spring, May, and I actually had an exemption to play the U.S. Open, but I had to stay amateur. So I stayed amateur through the summer. Everybody else, we had the developmental tour, the Symetra tour. We had status out there. We had not gone to LPGA school yet, so that was at the end of the year. But I played the U.S. Open as an amateur that summer, then officially turned pro and went and played a few events on the Symetra tour to finish out the summer. Then you went through what was the standard LPGA school. All that's changed now. It's a different system. But it was basically like 2 tournaments that you just had to finish in the top 20, top 30, whatever it was. And that was how you got LPGA status for the next year. And so that was how I got status. Then you went out, played LPGA tour, or you were still back playing the Symetra tour, or some combination of both. And it's a big difference. I talk about all these girls who play in college, and you definitely don't realize, especially if your school's paid for, like how much you haven't made as a college athlete. Because just all the way down to your, you know, not just that stuff's paid for, but it's planned for you. You know, you're not booking your flights, you're not having to rent a car, you're not having to, you know, figure all this stuff out. You don't have to drive yourself. You don't have to get yourself there. And then all of a sudden, I mean, if you were thrown out there to just literally navigate the country. I mean, I drove all over the country and flew, and, you know, you stay in private housing a lot of times. So you're staying with families and, you know, couples that you don't even know. And so you show up to their front door, trying to figure out how to get around to places. It's a huge, you know, huge growing up experience when it comes to that. And at the end of the day, yeah, it's, you know, all of it dictates whether you make any money or not. I tell everybody it's basically like paying your boss at the beginning of the week $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. That's usually about what the expense is and entry fee, and that's just for that part. To work for them for a week, to then at the end of the week to just come up one number short, and not only not at least break even, but literally lose all that money. So
you're basically betting on yourself. You're basically betting on yourself. It's like, hey, I'm going to pay this amount of money. I'm going to travel out here. I can at least break even.
Yeah. And that's what it's like. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of pros making a lot of money, but when you really look at it across the board and what it is, I mean, and it's tough. I mean, when it can easily suck the fun out of it. It adds that extra level of pressure and stress. And Because again, it's about, it's about your livelihood at that point, and whether you can pay your bills or, and it's not just, you just showing up to do it. You're paying to do it as well. You're paying, the money out of your pocket, or hopefully if you at least get a couple little small sponsors or something to help a little bit, it helps some, but otherwise you're paying an entry fee, you're paying all your travel, you got to pay your coach at home, you got to pay, all this other stuff. So it's tough.
I was going to ask you that. Did you have a sponsor coming out of college?
I had a little bit. I was lucky enough to have, it was more of an investment my first 2 years. So a guy that paid most all my expenses my first 2 years, which is what allowed my dad to caddy for me, because I could pay him. But he got 1% of my earnings, and it was not a very good business deal for him. It worked out well for me, but it didn't work out so good for him. But he was extremely generous about it. He paid my expenses. I gave him kind of the budget for the year for my first 2 years, and he covered it all and then got 1% of my earnings, kind of no questions asked. So I was extremely lucky for that, even if I did have to give up some of my earnings. But then after that, it was just totally like I might get $5,000 here for something, and I mean, that literally would cover a few weeks. So after that, it was all just trying to find. A lot of it came through the pro-ams that you played in. You might meet a sponsor that way, or different stuff like that. So it was just smaller sponsors here and there that would just help cover some expenses and maybe give you enough to at least be willing to put their name on your bag or something like that. And that was most of what it was.
Okay, so let me ask you this. So it's a singular sport. You're paying to go play these tournaments, right? And you're paying for your own stay. Is it the same in like tennis? Would you know if it to be the same? Like if you're lower down on the ATP tour or you're going to play a tournament, are you paying for your fee to get in?
My guess would be yes. I would imagine so. I don't know that for sure, but it's mainly because you're just not under any kind of team organization. Right. So I would think so. I don't know that for sure, but my guess would be that is the case.
I have a total new respect for all of that.
Yeah, no kidding. You know what sport this sounds like? CrossFit.
There you go. But as soon as we started saying that, the first thing that comes to my mind is that. Yeah.
But it is amazing because people don't think that. People watch the PGA or they watch the LPGA and they see the players playing. They're like, oh, well, they're just there to play. Everything was paid for them to be there.
Yeah. No.
And
it's no salary. The biggest thing is there's just no salary.
You're not under a contract.
Yeah. No. Unless you've got like a club sponsor, those kinds of things, you're under contracts with them, and there's certain, like, you got to play so many events, you got to make so many appearances. You
got to carry so many
clubs.
That
is about the only way you've got some kind of salary. Otherwise, I mean, it is a week to week. What you make is what goes in your pocket after all the expenses and pay your caddy and all that kind of stuff.
You eat what you kill.
Yeah, that's
the mentality.
Mm-hmm.
So for those of us who aren't super familiar with the LPGA like myself, how many women are on the LPGA tour at any given time?
So each tournament is usually going to have, if it's a regular event, it'll have 144. And there'll be a couple, right around 200 or so that will have some sort of LPGA, like, active status. So they just, like, to fill the field, they just kind of move down the priority list. But each tournament, if it's not a limited event like the U.S. Open or the major stuff like that, it's going to be 144 that start the tournament. And like I said, you got anywhere from 60 to 80, as much as maybe 100 women who have some sort of active LPGA status that moves down that list that they get in past that.
So what was your last LPGA official tour tournament you played?
My last LPGA event was 2009.
So
right? It was my last LPGA event in 2009. It was in Alabama or Texas, maybe. I'd been to a championship in Texas, I think was it.
So could you go play a tournament next week?
I couldn't. I didn't have enough. You have to have like 4 straight years where you played at least like 15 events or something. Mm-hmm. You had, if you missed 1 year, you started back from scratch.
Oh, wow.
And that got you quote unquote status for life. You're just down the list.
I got you.
So every now and then you would get into an event that was just a field that didn't fill up. And then the thing is, each year, if you don't finish in a certain spot on the money list,
right?
So that year, 2009, I finished 126 on the money list, and 125 kept status for the next year. So that was really the big turning point for me, was when I didn't keep it, and you literally go back to square one.
Wow.
Go back to Q school. If you don't make it there, you're right back to developmental tour, and you start the year all over as if like the year before didn't even happen. Basically.
So what would, obviously we know the decision, you're not playing anymore,
No.
but how hard of that decision, how close are you willing to go back to Q school and start over?
So 2009, I played most of the whole year on the LPGA tour and actually played really good. I made like 10 or 11 cuts, got in contention a few times, never finished in the top like 30 to really do anything great, but was really kind of getting in my groove out there and feeling comfortable. And then like I said, I just missed keeping it through the actual year. And then when I got to Q school, I didn't play good at Q school. And that was about the time I really wasn't planning to give it up, but I had connected with a company that does the recruiting stuff, was learning about this, and the plan was I would continue playing and start doing these events while I was out on the road. And I would still planning to play. I was going to go back to the Symetra tour and play that next year and keep at it. And then it just was this really not easy by any means. It just the whole thing just flipped after that next year. And I just realized that I just couldn't force myself to go back to those events and grind it out for another year. And I started kind of getting into the recruiting stuff and worked for this recruiting company, was doing speaking events and just really kind of growing in that. And that just kind of took over and started my business. And then before I knew it, I really wasn't playing anymore. Wow. It was never this like, I'm done. The last tournament, I played a handful of events in 2011 and then just decided that year I wasn't going to spend the money to go back to LPGA School. And
so you knew on your last tournament you were done?
No, that year, sort of, yeah. I mean,
how'd you feel? How did you feel? I guess what I'm trying to get at, I'm trying to get the tearjerker moment. How did you feel in the last tournament? Like, did it like hit you? You're like, this could be it?
Now, I did have that a little bit. So I actually played one event in 2011. My niece was like 2 years old, and it was a tournament, a Symetra Tour event down in Georgia, and that was the only event I played that year. So that was kind of my like one little come back, let my family come watch me, my dad caddy for me. So that was maybe the one nostalgic, like, hey, this is probably the last time my family will get to see me play like professional golf. So that probably was it, but that was the only event I played that year. Like I said, when I was playing the year before, it wasn't necessarily thinking that those were it, but they ended up being. So yeah.
Do you like that you just kind of phased yourself out and kind of transitioned that way? Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. It's, even though, I mean, it was a few years of some rough, like figuring my life out and who I was and what I was going to do. But because it was just kind of a gradual thing, it wasn't just this, like, this is my, my retirement, I'm done, right. It wasn't quite that. So it kind of helped me just to kind of like slowly figure out what it was I wanted to do and realize something else I enjoyed while I was still kind of playing. So it was a easier progression of it. It just, still, when I look back at a couple of years of my life with that, I was definitely still trying to figure out, like...
Could you go play, like, a lower tournament today?
I could, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the South Carolina has a women's open that has a professional field. I played in it a couple of years ago. I just, as much as I do with the training and lifting and the competitions, I actually have a really hard time walking in golf shoes for 18 holes. I've had 2 foot surgeries.
Wow.
And it puts more wear and tear on my feet and my joints than almost anything else I do. So it's just almost not enjoyable just to go walk a golf course.
Hey guys, we're going to take a break to thank our sponsors for today's episode. We're going to start off with CrossFit Greer. If you're living in the Greer area and are interested in getting started in CrossFit, go ahead and look up CrossFit Greer. Jen and Reagan Green are the owners there. If you mention the Apogee Podcast to them, they will give you 10% off your first month's membership fees.
I would also like to thank Blitz Belts and Chris Kane for their continued support of the show. So be sure to use their 15% off coupon code at checkout. That's Apogee, all caps. That gets you, the listener, 15% off at checkout at Blitz Belts on your custom order. I want to thank Goat Tape for being our new sponsor. Goat Tape has committed its brand to providing the best in athletic tape. They are the standard for CrossFit tape, scary sticky. Now they are providing the best in KT tape. So at checkout, be sure to get your 25% off your wholesale purchase. Use the coupon code Apogee at checkout.
Finally, if you guys would like to become an invested friend of the show and are interested in supporting the show directly, go to anchor.fm/Apogee Podcast and click on the support tab. We love bringing you guys awesome content each week, so be sure to subscribe to the podcast, drop a review, and let us know how we're doing. let's transition. Yeah, I want to transition here a little bit.
All right.
So a lot of this has been obviously about golf, and a lot of the people that listen to this, I'm sure a lot of people play golf, but a lot of people also do fitness and are into fitness. I'm interested in college or even on the LPGA tour. Was fitness even, like fitness is what we think of fitness. Was that even a part of your daily life at all, or did that come after golf?
So it was part of it through college and a little bit on tour, only because it was something you felt like you had to be doing. I mean, we had workouts in college. They weren't anything like super intense. Our coach made us run the golf course like almost every month, not every Monday, but several Mondays. We literally had to run from the top of Furman driving range the entire cart path of the golf course because the course was closed on Mondays. And I hated it. I still hate running.
How many miles is that?
7, 8-ish probably all the way. I'd say somewhere in there, 6 to 8. Yeah. Oh, I hated it. We would end up in the ice baths because my calves would be so locked up. It was the worst thing ever. Like I said, I was a health and exercise science major, so I was learning about all this stuff, but I didn't, and I was an athlete. I wasn't just a golfer. I was an athlete. We played intramural basketball, and, you give me a ball, but I just didn't enjoy the working out. Definitely didn't enjoy the nutrition part of being an athlete at all. But I did it because it was a little part of it, but it was very lackadaisical. It was very, just not much. You didn't necessarily enjoy it. And I did it when I first got out on tour. I lost a lot of weight my very first year on tour, and was working out. But again, it was pretty basic, pretty simple stuff. The guys that that own Night Performance Factory trained me some. They play football at Furman. They got into doing sports specific training, worked with them. And then the guy who owned their gym that they were at. And so did that a little bit when I was playing on tour, but I didn't take it serious. It was an afterthought. I did it, but it really was an afterthought. It wasn't until post-tour that I truly got a love for fitness and exercise and strength and conditioning and nutrition. All that came really after my professional career. I did it just a little, but it was not something that was, like I said, it was mostly an afterthought, which it's a big, big part of my kind of basis for my business and what I do now is just that transition of embracing that and just having a love for it now.
So you've transitioned from playing college golf and professional golf, and you now have Brandi Jackson Golf, which is basically your business that you've been mentioning here. What all does that entail? What all do you provide?
The core of it is college recruiting consulting. So you've got all these families out there, these girls who want to play college golf, and especially with it being an individual sport, you really don't know what to do. And some know what to do, but the big thing where I kind of come in is I know the college coaches. Huge part of my business is centered around my relationships with the college coaches and those connections and knowing them and being in the loop with that. But a lot of it's just the basics of getting them to figure out how to put a resume together and how to email coaches, how to talk to coaches. I think I heard, I don't know what episode it was. One of the ones, might have been when you had Amy on, you're talking about, I think it was you, David, that said you had like a 20-year-old that actually knew how to talk on the phone or something.
Right,
I don't remember what it was, and it rang a bell that same thing. I mean, these kids don't even know how to have these interviews. And so much of it is these life skills that they can learn through the process. So that's a lot of what I work with them on is just interviewing and, just being proactive with stuff, how to just write an email that comes across what it needs to say and so much of those pieces. And then just helping them with tournaments. I don't really do any coaching instruction. That's that very, very little bit that I might do for somebody that just asks, but there's none of that really within my business. It's mostly just consulting and it's done remotely and out on the road. I'm partnered with a really awesome girls tour that has a ton of tournaments across the East Coast. So I go out and talk to the families and we do presentations and I do consultations and watch my girls play. I've got a pretty big group of girls right now that I work with all across the country and some international kids. So that's really the core of it. And there's just a lot of mentorship tied into it and really just, just kind of being that kind of jack of all trades for all the different elements. And when they really need something specific, connecting them with those people and who that might be.
So you also mentioned that you do CrossFit. I mean, I've got photos to prove it. So when did you pick, what brought you to CrossFit?
So as I said, I trained with more of at a sports specific facility when I was playing golf. And when I left doing that, as I was not playing anymore, I really just didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was recommended to go because Brandon Chapin had also been at Furman and so I was like, hey, you should go over there. So I went there and I was at Reaction for a couple of years. That was when they were, I mean, their original spot in the storage unit.
Yep.
And I mean, I loved it, but I had actually so I had 2 foot surgeries during that time that were long recoveries. I was extremely limited on what I could do. So the same thing, I did it, but I never really got that serious. I really couldn't. I mean, I was extremely limited on what I could do, and my body had been worn down from golf for sure. And so did that, and then I went over to Swamp Rabbit for about a year or two, and then just went to the Y for a year. And with that, again, when I was there doing CrossFit, it was just for just a general workout, again, so limited. And then when the guys got ready to open up at Night Performance Factory, I was a lot kind of involved with some of the initial parts of the business and started working out there. And they're not CrossFit, they are sports specific based, but they do adult performance training. Started out just doing the regular classes, and then just got more and more serious, and that competition mentality kicked in. I did beast mode games.
Yep.
Then Steph DeVita, who's one of the coaches there, and I did the Greenville games, and we actually did really well in the scale division. And then from there, it was just that competition kicked in, and and that's what CrossFit has, that competitive environment. Now the classes that KPF does are just a little more general based with strength and conditioning and sports specific. So they train at professional athletes, college athletes in their specific sports. But there's a few of us that enjoy the kind of that CrossFit element, the lifting, the Olympic lifting, the conditioning, all of that, and doing those competitions. And so we kind of train specific to that, and PJ does a lot of our programming for it. And we're kind of the crazy ones there that do all that crazy stuff.
No, I love when you guys come out. I love when I see you guys at a tournament, because I can always tell who it is. And those guys are strong, man.
Super strong.
They're really strong. They're really nice guys too.
Yeah, they are. They're great. Yeah. So I've loved. I mean, it was been the family and everything that's brought. I mean, silly to say it. I mean, my business changed my life, but then that environment, I still struggle a little bit because of some of my injuries. I never really had any injuries playing, but like I said, I had 2 foot surgeries, and just what my body has taken from playing golf for so many years, and that repetitiveness of it. Shoulders, neck. I mean, I have to do a lot of mobility. And so, I'm only going to ever be able to do so much within the CrossFit world just because my body won't let me.
So what kind of foot injury do you get from golf?
So, well, it's not an injury. I had really bad bunions on both my feet for so many years, and it just jacked up my feet before I actually had surgery. And then so I had surgery on both of them. But the damage long term it did is just really kind of permanent. So I just don't have a lot of protection in the joints of my feet. So any impact stuff, so I don't run. So I love the competitions. I love trying to push and do what I can. But I've got a lot of limitations that I have to be careful of. And that's a struggle. I mean, that, when you play something very competitively, but you can only do so much. So I try to find that middle ground and try to be okay with where my limitations are and be happy with the progress that I do see.
So I'm interested as far as, playing golf your whole life, the swing is so intricate and the movement that you have to coordinate between the rotation of your body and your arms coming together, all of that, and, connecting with a tiny ball. How did any of that translate to any Olympic lifting, say snatching or anything like that?
So it's actually, that's one thing I love about the sport, and I've become, even though I wasn't this way about my golf game, I just played, I happened to be good at it, but I've definitely become kind of a little bit of a nerd, and I like connecting those things. I like when things connect. So, and when PJ and I, he's obviously got the background on the training, Olympic lifting, or not really Olympic lifting, but the training, strength conditioning side of things. And so we'll tie that into, he'll ask me about his golf swing. And so I'll relate that to some kind of lifting thing. And then I'll realize why I can't do something in a clean or a snatch. I'm like, that's because my body it doesn't go that way. And he's kind of, I love that part about it. I love that connection to it. Because there's definitely a lot of correlations. Cleans have a lot of correlation with that triple extension, because that's a lot of what the golf swing is about, really kind of getting in that triple extension in a way. A lot of core stuff, a lot of rotational stuff. So you don't see a ton of that in CrossFit, the core rotational, in a rotational movement, but a lot of that triple extension, explosion, that has definitely infiltrated much more into golf. Using the ground, that ground force has become a big part of golf swings to create that power. So it's cool to see all that, but then also know why I can't do some of the stuff. And my swing was very rhythmic. It was not, hit it a decent length, but I was never about a lot of speed and power.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the moves that have that, I'm like, I'm not meant to move this thing fast. Like, I have rhythm. I want to like pause and like, you know, and so it's funny to see some of that and just not be able to get out of that, like that mentality of it.
That's interesting. So when we were talking to you at Fittest for that brief couple minutes, and I do want to talk a little bit about your experience at Fittest too. But before we get into that, I believe Kevin asked you if you thought there was much translation from, you know, is CrossFit helping people's golf game? And you were kind of indecisive a little bit about it. At first you were like, not really, but then you kind of thought about it and you were like, yeah, sure, it does. I'm interested with your consulting company, is asking what kind of fitness level or what they're doing for fitness or what they're doing for training part of your consulting for these girls. Talk about what all about that.
It is, and actually it's a big thing that got brought up this past week with a lot of my girls. I had them all ask me like, hey, what's something that you haven't asked recently that you need to ask? And a lot of them were asking about the working out part of things. And part of my reason for saying that was more because a lot of people see what I do when I post it on social media and some of the crazy stuff. And I kind of have to remind everybody that like, this isn't necessarily what a golfer needs to be doing from a training, especially as a kid. Like, yes, I mean, the mentality CrossFit can do and some of the elements of it would be a great, you know, strength and mental training. But for golf, it is a very specialized kind of sport for what you need to be doing training wise. There's a whole, Titleist Performance Institute has all these levels of certification. I actually have the first level of certification that is very golf fitness specific. And so it's so much more about, you know, training specifically to golf and your swing. So that was probably my reason for kind of saying it that way, was just because, you know, it's, while there are definitely some elements and some overlapping ones, when it comes to that, especially for kids in high school and college, that their bodies are still growing and developing, you've got to be really careful about what you're doing, given that golf is such a repetitive one plane kind of movement, so specific that it does require, if at all possible, doing some golf specific training. Now, is something better than nothing? 100%. I would much rather see the girls doing something active and fitness wise. I just always sometimes hesitate because I'm like, I don't want them going in and like, you know, trying to do squats and trying to do all this stuff and getting themselves hurt. So there's a thin line there between not wanting them to have to, you know, feel like they got to just go crazy specialized and spend all this money, but yet, you know, hey, you need to do something, you know, especially if all you've ever done is play golf. You need to do something to develop this strength and this speed just as a general athlete. And things like that with CrossFit can certainly do that. And in that mentality and that grind that it creates, by all means, is a great thing for it.
So if I'm just a regular Joe golf player, but I do CrossFit, what is the one movement in CrossFit that would benefit me most on the golf course?
Ooh, goodness. Man. I mean, cleans would probably be a good one. Trying to think of something in kind of more CrossFit specific. I mean, a lot of the core stuff definitely helps. I think who we're talking about that you're talking about doing a lot of GHD stuff and everything. A lot of core stuff is definitely very good. To be honest, I would say not necessarily a CrossFit movement, but making sure you focus on mobility, because if you're not careful and you get, it's what PJ, he loves playing golf and trying to play, but because his shoulders are so big and tight, like it's hard to swing, because golf is about your hips kind of disconnecting from your shoulders. So I'm trying to think of something in CrossFit. There's just not a lot of like rotational stuff in CrossFit. And I'm sure there's something as soon as we get off, I'm going to be like, oh, that's what it was.
Lumberjacks. But we don't do that in CrossFit.
Honestly, something, like, you know, when you don't really do it in CrossFit. Same thing with the hammer, like with the tire. I know some you don't see it as much anymore.
Sure. That
kind of stuff would probably be something kind of that would probably fit in there.
Would you say kettlebells too, maybe?
Yeah, a lot of and then we do it. So KPF does a lot of kettlebell, dumbbell, single arm, single side stuff. A lot of that stuff's really good for golf too.
That's what I was gonna say, like a single dumbbell snatch or clean and jerk with a dumbbell.
Yeah,
that would be
stuff like that.
Huge.
Yeah. I think I went to just the main like Olympic lifts, but a lot of that stuff would be
So it's interesting. You see guys on the PGA Tour like Brooks Koepka, right? And then what is that one guy's name? Who's
Tiger Woods?
Bryson.
Just kidding.
Bryson.
Who wears the old golfer's hat? Is that who I'm talking
Oh,
about?
yeah, Bryson DeChambeau.
And yes, and these guys have just gotten huge, right? Like, what are they doing to work out? I haven't looked into it at all. I don't know if they're just doing traditional lifting or are they doing any type of like functional fitness.
So there's going to probably be a good combination of both. So some of them, if you do follow their stuff, any of those guys, their trainer is going to be golf specific. They're going to be TPI certified. They're going to have that level of very golf specific. But they're also, because they are, professional athletes and they can handle that, that strength and conditioning part, they're going to do a lot more of that. And so you don't see a lot of them doing super high, like intensity stuff with it as much. It's still a little more kind of steady, maybe a little bit of kind of hit, interval stuff in there. You don't see a lot of them just kind of like killing themselves in the gym in that sense of just like conditioning. It's still kind of centered a little bit more around kind of like steady state for the most part, but they do a good bit of kind of strength stuff. I know when Ryan's training anybody golf wise, some trap bar deadlifts and, but again, it's still a lot of like med ball rotational stuff and a lot of that stuff in there too. Single arm sled pulls and different things like that. Very cool.
Let's talk, since fitness is kind of near and dear to our heart, talk a little bit about your experience over there. Was it fun? You were in, which age group were you in again?
The Masters Elites.
Okay, perfect.
35 to 44, I think is what it was. Yeah.
So talk about it. Was it fun? What was your favorite part?
It was. It's the first time I've ever competed individually. I've always done something as a team, so that was very different for me. Even though I played golf individually, all of my like training and fitness, all that has been team oriented. So that was different, just to have to kind of find that mentality as a individual, knowing that at the end of the day, it's kind of like, well, if you don't do well, what's the big deal? But like when you've got a teammate, you kind of feel like you got to take, you don't want to just throw everything on them. So that really helps you go. So that mental part of that, to just, push yourself in that environment. And again, for me, I was on the bubble of getting in. I was really one of the last ones who got in, just because it had gone down from where Jen and Annie were running it. And so I got in as like the 33rd spot. So I was just happy to be able to compete and do it. But it was a ton of fun. I had not done rope climbs in a long time. So it was fun to that's the thing I love about any of those competitions. There's almost some kind of element in there that either you don't do very much or you've never done, especially for us that we don't do true CrossFit on a regular basis. We're always having to learn some kind of new skill when we get ready for it. So that was kind of, that one was the rope climbs, even though I ripped my hand open sliding down one of them.
We were right there at it when we watched you doing it.
Yeah. But it was a ton of fun. And that is what I know one of your questions talking about, that CrossFit community between us hosting the Frenzy event and then doing Fitness of the Upstate. It's where I've gotten to know so many people through that. Right. And for me too, that's been one of the biggest parts of it, is just getting to know, especially all the other females in it, and just connecting with everybody. And that's been a huge part of what I've loved about it, is getting a little bit more tied in that community and feeling a little bit a part of that has been, and in Fitness of the Upstate was a great experience for that.
Very cool.
So where did you finish? What was your final placement for fittest?
Honestly, I don't know. 17, 18, maybe.
Look it up on local comp.
See, that's what I was gonna say.
There's a plug.
You were like, you kind of sort of got an exemption to get in there, but you still finished like in the middle of the pack. So you proved that you deserved to be there.
Yeah, I did all right. I did okay. Yeah.
Nice.
It wasn't a total bomb. So yeah.
I've got a question for you, and this has been tossed around. This is kind of from left field, but this has been tossed around a lot lately as the CrossFit Games and the CrossFit season constantly is like fluctuating and kind of changing. It seems like every year. It seems like now they might have like a good process, but something that is always brought up is like, what would it be like if professional CrossFitters had like a professional card like golf, and there was a two? What's your opinion on that? Do you have an opinion? Do you think that would be a good idea, or?
Well, in some ways, that having been in a sport that does that, I look at CrossFit as kind of having that, because you kind of have your same ones that qualify every year. You get a few that kind of come in, a few that kind of fall out. So, and you kind of got your, what was, regionals that then became sanctionals, and then kind of back to kind of regionals again. That's happened these last couple of years. a little bit of it. Only difference is, and it's just what I said about like, Bethany and Carrie getting COVID. And I mean, the only kind of difference is, CrossFit games are literally just that one thing, kind of like the Olympics, whereas on tour, you've got the next week, you've got the next chance to make money or to win. When something like that happened, I mean, you really have to feel bad because so much training is done for that. So that part's definitely different. I feel like it would be hard to do it on like too much of a repetitive, to a certain extent, just because of the intensity of it and just the, the training for it or whatever. But there's elements of it that kind of correlate to what I see from like a, kind of golf tour perspective. But then it does just also, culminate in that one CrossFit Games. Whereas, when you do look at something like the LPGA, the PGA Tour, it's just this ever revolving thing. But it has that element of kind of the same ones qualify. You got a few that kind of move in and out, and then you kind of get wipes, clean slate at the end of the year, and you start over and you qualify and you do it again. It's just a little more condensed and just has one bigger ending to it. I feel like
I completely agree with you. I feel like there should be some sort of clause though, where like some of these people, maybe some of these top people shouldn't have to do the Open, right? Like maybe they just go straight to quarterfinals, because doing the Open, that would actually open up more spots for people who are trying to get up instead of.
But they already do that kind of sorta.
Huh?
They already do that kind of sorta.
What do you mean?
Like if they qualify for a sanctional, like if somebody goes to, when they used to do it before, if they went to a place and got in and still did the Open and won the Open, they could.
I'm saying this year now, like the way the season is set up right now, the Open is just to qualify for for quarterfinals.
Gotcha.
So like if some of these top players, like the top 20 from the CrossFit Games or whatever, don't have to do the Open, that'll open up spots for people who are up and coming to maybe qualify for, I don't know. That's just, there's got to be something like where some of these, it's just a waste of time for like the top 10, 20 are always going to be.
I don't agree with that.
You think everybody should start? So it's interesting to me because it's like.
It's the greatest thing about CrossFit is the only sport where everybody pays $20 to get to the field.
But how do you gain professional status then is what I'm trying to get at, right?
You show up, you do the work every day, you get into the games, you qualify the games year after year. And then sponsors come and find you out.
Correct. So like in the NBA, the team is paying those players, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And then on top of that, they're getting sponsorships. In CrossFit, sure, the top 10 people might be making a couple $1,000. Literally, like the top person's making $300,000+, which is not a lot of money for a professional sport. In fact, the lowest paid player in the NFL is like $700,000, and they don't even see the field. So how do we get it from where it's at right now to actually become professionalized, where CrossFit is able to pay these players, and it's not all the money's just coming from sponsorships? That's what I'm saying. There's got to be some sort of way to professionalize the sport. So I was just wondering what your opinion was on that.
But that's where I see the correlation with golf, because exactly what you said.
Yeah.
Golfers don't have any organization paying them. They just have more opportunities throughout the year to make money, whereas CrossFit those athletes only have limited time to make their money. And so, golf's kind of in that same boat of kind of like what CrossFit is, as opposed to the NBA, they're getting paid a salary, or the NFL, they're getting paid a salary, plus all their expenses are paid for, all their equipment's paid for. Golf, you're paying for not necessarily paying for your equipment. You're usually going to have somebody, but you're paying for your travel, and you just have a few more opportunities to play, to make a little bit better living than a CrossFit athlete who just has a couple of sanctional events or, those things, and then the one CrossFit games where they make that one big paycheck if they do. So
I think that's the thing about social media and CrossFit. If it wasn't for social media, you wouldn't have CrossFit athletes.
No,
you wouldn't.
No, it's been a big part of it.
So I mean, you're tech savvy and you're out there, and this is what you really want to do, and you believe in yourself, and you make those videos, and you show up and you train every day, and you make it look like you're all about the gym. That's where a lot of those people's and it's kind of like a put up or shut up mentality. You believe in yourself, like I'm saying, you're betting on yourself, and I know athletes that have failed drug tests, and they're not competing for 3 years, but yet they're still out there promoting themselves. They're still doing the work because they know once it's over, they're going to go right back into it.
It's hilarious. It's so funny. And I love being in the CrossFit bubble. I love CrossFit. It's fun. It's one of my favorite things. I love everything about it. But it's so funny because, like, if you go, Justin Medeiros becomes the fittest man on planet Earth. You go to work on Monday, and 100% of the people there have no idea who Justin Medeiros is. You know, like it's just
some random guy with a mullet.
It's such a small bubble, but when you're in it, it just seems like the world, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I can agree. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're an experienced athlete, a college player, and a recruiter. What is the most, or what are some of the most things that you tell parents and students about the recruitment process?
It is not, because this came up, and it kind of applies to, I think, a lot of parents out there who have kids. And one of the things I struggle with in the consulting side, not so much specific to like the recruiting process, but just like kids and athletes and athletics and all that, is there's such a thin line, especially the world we live in right now, between pushing to get them to understand and instill work ethic and grit and the grind and what being an athlete can do for you, and the mentality and just the fitness, all of that together, but yet knowing this world of not pushing too much. And, you know, kids are becoming so much more independent, and let them do what they want to do, and it should be their decision to play a sport. You know, it's become such a gray, like, weird area. That's probably been one of the biggest struggles, and one of the things that I, battle with the parent, not battle, but talk to the parents about, is where is that? You don't ever want to push the kids to do stuff they don't want to do. You don't want to force them when these, it's kind of like the Simone Biles thing, all about the mental health. Then you get these kids to go to college, and you got these suicide rates and all of this. But then again, it's down to like, that is where you learn work ethic, and it's within a sport a lot of times, and it's within that mentality that you've got to like suffer through it and deal with it and be made to do things you don't want to do. And it's become such a weird, just gray, just overlapping space there that's just very, very hard. So I think that's probably, again, I don't have an answer to it, but that's just probably one of the biggest battles that I see parents, kids, everybody right now in athletics as a whole. Wow. And I see it a lot from a recruiting process, because I'm getting those kids that are at that level and making that decision to play at the next level. And a part of my job is, hey, do they have what it takes? And if they don't, then, hey, we don't need to be looking at these big D1 schools. We need to look at a D3 school or something like that.
So my question for you is, when you're having these tough conversations with parents who, it's funny, before I had kids, I always said, I'm a physical therapist, so I see kids come in, there never should be a 12-year-old who has to have Tommy John surgery, right? Yeah. In my opinion, that's borderline child abuse. And you're not seeing that as much anymore, where kids are like pitching in an enormous amount of games. It's just bad coaching, and I think the game has kind of evolved in Little League, but you see so many parents trying to live vicariously through their kids, and if their kid just doesn't have it, that's got to be a tough conversation to have with those parents. I know before I had kids, I was like, I'm never going to live vicariously through my kids, but it's almost, when you do have kids, it's almost impossible not to have these aspirations or dreams for what you see that the potential that they could have or be. And it's sometimes you just got to tone that down in your head, and you're like, I'm not going to be that guy. I'm not going to be that parent. Yeah. But I know there's a lot of parents out there who are those parents. So it's got to talk about those conversations real quick.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's just like what you said and yes, there are some that 100% are doing it, living vicariously and doing it that way. And then a lot are just wanting to do it because, like I said, you want the best opportunities for your kids. You want them to be successful, and you don't want them to look back and have regrets that, that they didn't take it more serious. And again, it's just even these just traits that they need to develop of not giving up and working hard and having to do these things again that they don't want to do, and long hours of practice. It's things that teach them qualities that they need as an adult. But where is that line between it being about you wanting it for them more than they want for themselves? But the fact that there are only 14, 15, 16 year olds that they don't totally know what they want yet anyway. So it's a lot of what my daily work comes into is, where is that, where do you let these kids make the decision themselves? The whole recruiting process is a lot of I have a lot of parents like, well, this is going to be her decision. And, and then others, it's the parents' decision.
Yeah.
And again, where is that? Because, we're all still talking about teenage kids that do have a lot more responsibility than what we had as teenagers. But yet at the end of the day, they're still teenagers. They still need to be led and guided. Otherwise, they're going to become these, lackadaisical, don't know how to answer the phone when somebody calls in an office. They're not going to have those
for
things.
Sure.
So it's such a thing, and it's what a lot of college coaches deal with. That's why a lot of them get out of the business, because they want to instill this, but there's so many politics behind what they can and can't do. So again, you get a lot of them that that float that thin line and then just have so much red tape to it right now.
Have you ever thought about being a high school and or college golf coach?
So I was offered a couple of opportunities to maybe interview from a college coach position, especially the first couple of years of my business. And actually, I guess it doesn't matter what I share. It was actually in the running for the Clemson job at one point, and was interviewed, went through the full interview process. It's really the only one I've considered, and it was ties to Clemson that I was, kind of got recommended for it and considered it, but definitely glad I didn't. I love what I get to do and love that I don't have as much of that red tape and I can be a little more honest about stuff. And then just, especially as a professional golfer, I mean, you're so much in control of what you do, and you definitely don't like to be told what to do and not to do. So it would have been hard to kind of be put in that bubble. So it's nice with what I do in my business, just to kind of run it, and the creativity I get to have with it, and just the freedom to do things and take it where I want to take it. 100% glad, but the opportunity and to even be considered for that was just a huge honor.
Right.
But glad it worked out the way it did. So, but I miss that element. A lot of my girls are all over the country. Some of them I've never even met before. I miss a little bit of the element of just truly being involved in their daily kind of progress of stuff and development of stuff, that I don't quite get to have my hands on that as much. That's the one aspect that I miss about my business.
Cool. So what would you say your what is your major obstacle that you've had to overcome, just in general with CrossFit and or with your job as far as golf goes? The major, the obstacle that you've had to overcome.
Or it doesn't even have to be golf or CrossFit related.
I think too, from a physical standpoint, it has been the wear and tear on my body from golf and just the limitations that it puts in trying to balance that competitive mindset, not trying to compare myself to other people, not being the best at what I do, which is how I was with golf. In the CrossFit world, I am this little teeny tiny person, and a lot of people don't realize that when they see my videos and think that like it's something special. I'm like, y'all don't even know. Like, this is just this little teeny tiny like weight compared to like, and so sometimes just trying to put that in perspective of it, having been a high level athlete and not being, and just knowing what my body can do and can't do is probably always been one of the biggest obstacles, and just listening to it. And as an athlete, you play through the pain. You have to learn how to, and you gotta know your limits, but you gotta know that you just can't, like, every little injury, every little thing that hurts, you can't just kind of walk away. But yet reminding myself, I'm not a professional athlete anymore. I do this for fun. That's been one of it. And mentally for me, it's just learning how to be more disciplined and structured and maintain that life. That was not what I was as an athlete. And probably the obstacle of it is just not having the regrets for it, and just not beating myself up about who I am now as a business owner and a fitness kind of nerd, and being so much more structured and disciplined, and just making sure that I know that there's a reason it took me time to get here. And that was what I missed in my professional golf career that held me back. But I didn't know any difference. My boyfriend at the time that I was playing professionally was the toughest person on me. Horrible from a relationship standpoint, but it changed my life for him, just bringing to light that, like, I was trying to be a professional athlete, but like my priorities were all over the place. I was so lackadaisical, so undisciplined. And so anytime I complain about stuff or, mad that I didn't play good, he's like, you can't even say anything. Like, you didn't practice last week. You went out, you didn't go to the gym, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. And it was the first kind of wake up call to that. And over the last 10 years, my mentality's just gradually developed into more and more of what a true athlete needs to be. And that's always been that, hurdle that I've had to, those demons, I guess, in a way of that.
Sure. That's awesome. And that's something that's an awesome little tidbit that you can, I'm sure, share with your kids that you're consulting. So I think and the parents, I think that's awesome. All right.
Yeah. It's time.
Just as my ear pods are dying. So.
We'll make it quick. We'll make it quick. All right, rapid fire questions.
I'm down to just one right now, so we'll see how long it lasts. If not, okay. I'll switch it over. So.
Okay.
You go first.
Oh, I go first. All right.
You going first?
What was your favorite thing that you did on your 40th birthday? Because it was very all over your Instagram.
It was. It would definitely have to be skydiving, although I didn't get to do it until like 2 or 3 weeks later. But myself and Jen Green, she turns 40 later this year. We went the week of my birthday, but the weather had pushed them off, and that was definitely the highlight of turning 40. And I did a little bit of a fundraiser, which was kind of cool. I did my own little burpee-thon to raise money for a couple of girls' organizations, Girl Up Greenville, the PKB, and the First Tee. Those two together would go hand in hand for ringing in 40 in a good way. So, yeah.
Great.
So, did you ever use driving irons, like the 1 and 2 irons?
I had probably up to a 2-iron when I was a kid because we didn't have hybrids and all that.
Right.
So we had those high irons, 2-3-iron. I remember I think I had a ping eye 2-iron at one point that I don't know if I hit it very good, but I had it.
Gotcha.
What would be the ideal first date that would get you off the market?
Oh, goodness. Not just boring dinner. Like, I'm so bad at initials. The reason why I hate, like, everybody tries to get me on dating apps and do all this. It takes, even though I've been sitting here talking to y'all for this long and I'm an open person, but it takes a lot to get me to open up. So when you put me in that setting, I'm going to clam up. You're not going to see the real me. So, it's just got to be I've got to meet somebody in just a common, relaxed setting, and then some kind of date after that. Just those first dates are and I'm so awkward with that kind of stuff. I'm just bad. So it needs to be like, meet them in the gym, but then again, in those settings, I'm so like in my own world that I'm like, I don't want to talk to you. Like, don't talk to me. I'm a big introvert when it comes to that kind of stuff. So it just has to be something not cheesy, but creative and more fun, not just sitting at a table trying to talk to each other and have conversation and somebody asking me personal questions, because you're not going to get a lot of good answers probably.
Perfect.
So what's more appealing to you nowadays? Shooting par for the course or getting a new PR?
Definitely getting a new PR. Yeah. I just don't play enough. I mean, it's nothing beats the feel though of a really good golf shot. I mean, that solid shot, just when you pure it or you just hit that drive that just feels really good. Nothing does beat that feeling. But just from a ongoing perspective, just whether it's a PR, just figuring something out. This past week is working on handstand push-ups and just figuring those, little things out. All of a sudden something clicking and being like, oh, that's kind of the sequence of it. That definitely over most golf scores in that for sure.
Nice.
I don't know why, but I think I'm going to keep going with this whole dating thing. Would it be tough? Would it be tough for you to date somebody who wasn't good at golf?
No, honestly, most every guy I've dated was not very good at golf. I always dated athletes, but it was other sport athletes. I've never dated really golfers. My college boyfriend ended up being a pretty good golfer. He was football. He played football at Furman. Really got into golf as we started dating, and he was my caddy a bunch of times. And he just fell in love with the game. Turned into be a pretty good amateur. But, it's a hard one because I love athletes, but then you put an athlete on the golf course and they can look so uncoordinated and so goofy. And so it's hard to put those two elements together. But, the golf part, I just usually expect a guy not to be very good at golf just because most guys aren't really that good at golf if you just play on a regular basis. So,
right.
But you do, some sort of athleticism or, that ambitious fitness, that has to be a part of it. If not, I don't know what I'd even talk to you about. Because
All right, let me test your golf knowledge here, our local golf knowledge.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to give you 5 courses, and I want you to rank them. And you could say I haven't either played it or not played it. So you ready? Basketball.
Yeah.
Here's your 5 courses. Basketball.
Okay.
Brookstone. Cobb's Glen. Thornblade. And Starwood back in the day.
Oh, goodness. So, I mean, for me, coming from the type of country club I came from, we didn't include a Saluda Valley in there, but I gotta give my.
Well, I mean, that's your home. I'm not gonna. I figured that was gonna be top anyway.
I mean, basketball, I grew up playing it, every Monday and Monday tournaments. Brookstone, that's when I got into my teaching, what little bit of teaching I did. Loved the crew that was out of Brookstone at that time. I remember Starwood is a memory I have. One of the first Masters I went to with my dad. And I think it was Starwood. And we stopped there on the way back from going to the Masters and played like 9 holes. Or is it Star Fort? It might have been Star Fort.
No, Starwood was just a 9-hole course that had a chain link fence for a backstop, one stop.
It might have been Star Fort, but
okay.
Anyways, what was the fourth one? Basketball,
Cobb's Glen.
So Cobb's Glen was actually really my second home next to Fluta Valley.
Really?
So
okay.
They had an LPGA girls golf program out there. I went down there to it. So it was like my second home. Wade May, who is still out there now, has been out there since I was a kid. Love. I mean, again, I wouldn't really be where I was if it wasn't for them letting me come out there and be in the clinic and all that. And then Thornblade just, like they definitely welcomed me as a professional, and I'm on the board of directors for the Blade tournament. So love so much about a lot of the people out at Thornblade. And I mean, you just don't get a better, facility and country club and all that than what's out there.
Cool. I know you've heard this question before, but Harrison gives you a prepaid black card. You're going to the airport right now. Where are you going for a week?
Oh, goodness.
And who are you bringing?
Can I bring my dog? Can I
yeah,
bring Maddie?
yeah, absolutely.
Because I couldn't pick between everybody. I've got such an awesome group of friends, and still looking for that, and family. Like, maybe my sister probably would be who I would bring if I had to just pick somebody. Her or my mom probably, to be able to take them. I always loved that they got to go see cool places when I was playing on tour. And I personally would probably go somewhere like a safari or somewhere, because unfortunately I've had skin cancer. So while tropical laying on the beach sounds great, like I get super bored with that. Like it sounds great when you see it and you're like, oh my gosh, I want to go there, just go lay on the beach. But that only lasts so long for me for skin reasons and whatnot. So I would like to go somewhere more, whether it's to go, Italy or to Africa on a safari or something just more like adventurous. Go see the pyramid, something like that is probably what I would do.
Sweet.
So we have another golf pro in this CrossFit Upstate community, Carrie, out at
Carrie,
Reaction.
Yep.
Have you guys ever played against each other?
We have not played against each other. Maybe we should come up. Maybe we should have some kind of like competition type golf. She's a whole lot stronger and fitter than me. I might could take her on the golf course. I might could even out the CrossFit with the golf, maybe.
There you go. You heard it right there.
But yeah.
Apogee's gonna host a golf tournament between Carrie and
I'd love it.
Brandi.
Yeah,
Let's do it.
It's a challenge right here. I'm gonna challenge her to
all
golf.
right.
There you go.
You heard it.
She's got all. Yeah.
So, all right. Here's an interesting question. Would you get more pride and joy out of winning the most major LPGA Tour tournament or winning the CrossFit Games?
Oh, goodness. I would have to say, because I think more of my like demons would go back to my LPGA career, I would probably get more out of that, because that really then would show that I have kind of overcome what held me back during that. And so I think that would, just because I think that would be somewhat of that kind of satisfaction that like, yeah, I didn't get to do it then, but at least I could somewhat prove that like I'm in a better place. I have better, work ethic. Not that because I don't think it was necessarily about needing to be a better golfer. So yeah, I would say that would have to be more pride and joy to do that at this stage, even though I love the CrossFit element of stuff, the strength, the conditioning, the grind of that more right now than I do playing golf. That would still be it.
Cool. All right, so you're playing a foursome. I'm going to take it out of the gym this time. You're playing a foursome, all right? But you only can play it with CrossFit athletes.
That's a good question.
So,
I like it.
What golf course are you playing on, and who are the 3 CrossFit athletes that you're having a foursome with?
All right. So the golf course I would play. I'd have to go play because I've actually never played Pebble Beach. So we'd all go out to Pebble Beach or just somewhere really like exotic or something. And then they would have to probably be trying to think of somebody that I would want to just play. She competed in the games this year. Bailey Rael, Can I say last
Yeah.
name? She actually was a college golfer, actually. So I might have to take her just out of pure skill. I've always followed her because she played at Drake University, I think, and competed in the games this year. But I would say on the men's side of things, I mean, I'd love to see Rich go out and try to play golf. I mean, he's so good at what he does. You know, I'd rather him over Matt Frazier, I think. So just to see him go out and play. I love, she didn't compete this year. One of my favorite CrossFit athletes is Tasia. So I think I would just love to spend the day with her on the golf course. And to be honest, this is ironic because they're all mayhem. And then to see Haley Adams get out there is like, how she is, to see her try to hit a golf ball would be pretty entertaining too. So it might be those three. I mean, I guess we just go to Tennessee and do it, but I love their mentality. So I think when I look at stuff, Tia's awesome. I absolutely love how she does stuff. I love Katrin. I don't keep as much on the men's side as I do the women's side. I definitely follow a lot more of the women and watch more of that during the games. Annie, she would be so much, such an inspiration there. So many of them, but it would probably be that crew of those three at Mayhem that I would love to just see and spend the day with on a golf course.
Very cool.
That's cool.
Awesome. Well, do you have anything you want to say to wrap this up?
Where can people find you on these SoCal meds? People want to contact you.
Yes, as my earpods, good timing because my earpods did just die. So for my all of my fitness, crazy stuff, life, my dog, my Instagram is just Brandi L Jackson. And you can find me at KPF most of the time at the gym if you want to actually ever come there and work out and hang out. My business Instagram is Brandi Jackson Golf, and it's Brandi with an I. That's all my business stuff. It's where I post all my recruiting, all the important but maybe not as fun and entertaining as my regular personal site. So it's not hard to find me. So feel free, come follow, send me a message. Happy to connect with anybody.
Awesome.
Well,
yeah.
thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. I really enjoyed hearing about everything from, early golf years to what you're doing right now. I think it's I think as a parent, it's very inspiring to see, I know your parents invested a lot in your golf as growing up, and to see you still using it in a facet of business, I think is very cool. And it was just, I love seeing things that when people have been doing it all their life and incorporate that into a business. I think that is one of the coolest things. So,
yeah.
Anyways, enough of that. Thanks for coming on. We'll see you in the gym, and y'all heard it here.
Apogee Podcast.